I've only been painting Warhammer for about 4 months, mostly focusing on World Eaters, but my 8-year-old son has decided he wants to collect Imperial Fists, so I figured I better learn how to paint yellow. We did make the mistake of priming some of his models black, which made painting yellow even harder. I tried dry brushing those with Agrax white to lift the midtones and help the yellow sit better. Hopefully that works out. But for this intercessor I wanted a cleaner base, so I primed it with Brainmatter Beige from Army Painter. Starting with the yellow armour, I used Averland Sunset over the primer. I'm trying to keep the coats thin and just do 2 layers. The brushes that I'm using are from a set I picked up on Amazon. There's 21 brushes, which includes 3 dry brushes. It wasn't expensive, and honestly it's been working well for me so far. A few of them are starting to lose their point though, so I'm probably due to invest in at least one good quality brush soon. Once the armour was done, I moved on to the chainsword. I painted the casing with Abaddon black, trying to keep the edges neat where it meets the arm so I don't go onto the yellow that I've already done. There's also some trim on the pauldron and a small skull and cross detail on the wrist. I used Mephiston red for those areas. I then used Leadbelcher for the teeth and vents, giving it that solid metallic look. With all the base colours down, it was time for shading. I started with Agrax Earthshade over the yellow armour. I was careful not to let it pool too much in the recesses, it can dry patchy if you're not watching it. There were a couple of occasions where I put too much of the Agrax Earthshade on, so all I did was wipe my brush on a bit of kitchen paper, and then just apply that to the recesses and just let it soak up the excess shade. Next, I used Carroburg Crimson over the Mephiston red areas, like the trim and the Aquila. It really helps deepen the red and adds a nice bit of richness. And finally, I shaded all the Leadbelcher parts with Nuln oil. It really helps to give the metal details a grungy look. I then moved on to the powerpack. This was pretty much the same process. I applied 2 layers of the Averland Sunset, and then I applied Leadbelcher to the vents. Because I knew I was applying 2 coats of the yellow, I wasn't particularly neat with the first one, I just kind of got it on there. I'm definitely not the neatest of painters. My technique could definitely use some work. I saw a YouTube video recently where they suggested that rather than putting the paint on your palette and then adding water to it, if you preload your brush with water and then dip that in your paint and then apply it to your palette, it just means that you get sort of a bit more water on there, and then it gives you a bit more of a thinner consistency on your paint. I've been trying this technique for a couple of weeks now and it seems to work quite well. Once I put the base colours down, I used the same shades on the power pack as I did for the arm, so Agrax Earthshade over the yellow, and then Nuln oil over the Leadbelcher. On the main body, I decided to use the Abaddon black on the bits in between the armour first, before I did the Averland sunset. That way, if I made a mistake, I wouldn't get black on the yellow, and it'd be slightly easier to correct it. I used Khorne red for the Aquila on his chest. It's a slightly darker red to the Mephiston red. I also applied it first before doing the Averland sunset, in the hope that it would be easier to clean up any mistakes. This is the model with one coat of the Averland sunset. It looks a bit patchy, but then when I went back and did the second coat, it looked perfectly fine. For the purity seals, I used Rakhar flesh for the parchment and Khorne red for the wax seal. I applied Carroburg crimson again to the Aquila on the front of his chest. It gave a deeper red than the trim on his pauldrons, which looked quite good. And I shaded the wax seal with Nuln oil. I applied a lot more of the Agrax Earthshade to the body than I did to the arms, and I think I probably didn't put enough on the arms. I also applied Agrax Earthshade to the parchment on the purity seal. I then finished off some of the details on his armour with Leadbelcher, which I shaded with the Nuln oil again. For his pouches, I used Dryad bark as a base, and then shaded that with the Agrax Earthshade. For the base, I used AK Dry Ground. It kind of dries in like a gritty texture. I used an old brush to just kind of push it around the base and then up to his feet. I wasn't particularly neat with it. If it got it on his boots, it just kind of gives the effect that he's been stomping around in the sand. And then the final thing to do was finish the base off with a couple of coats of Abaddon black. And then once everything was dry, all I had to do was assemble all the pieces. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching. My next video is going to be highlighting the model. Hopefully that won't take too long to make. But if you like this video, please subscribe, like it. Thanks very much.